Okay, great. All right. Well, to the few folks who joined us on here, and then for all who might watch the video, we will get started here. I'm Lucas Metropulos, which I know many of you know. I have a bit of a slide deck here. It's a little longer. I'm not going to go through every single page throughout, but I am going to make sure we can share this with all the folks who signed up. I think we had like 25 or 30 signups, so I'll definitely make sure to send that out to everyone to see it. This topic, and those that are on the call, you can feel free to ask questions and cut me off anytime. Thank you for being here. But obviously, this is a big topic for pretty much every chapter. Sponsorships and donations. It's probably one of the most common things that I hear looking for assistance on. Also, hearing some wonderful things that groups are doing and some things that you might want to improve. So I'm going to skim through, again, a lot of words here. I'm going to skim through much of it and then make sure you guys have it. But just some of the main questions that I see chapters face. I get this a lot. Is it, are we going after sponsorships or donations? I see that word used pretty synonymously, and obviously they're different. And I always hear different concerns about what chapters might be able to offer, what they shouldn't offer. I also see some folks concerned about actually even going after sponsorships, and especially if they might be reporting on certain companies in town or organizations. And then also that kind of idea of a perception problem that some of getting support from certain entities or individuals or foundations might create for some of the chapters. And then, of course, some of the events that I hear a lot about, awards events, recognition events, the regional conferences. Right now, we're going after a lot of sponsorships for national. So we're obviously thinking about some of these same questions. Then also other events like membership drives and things like that. Oh, sorry. So these are some of the most common challenges that I see, sort of these undefined expectations. I've heard little anecdotes here and there of chapters raising funds for regional, for let's say a chapter level event, and they don't fully understand or haven't really lined up exactly what they're able to offer. Sometimes it's just that cookie cutter offering of well, your logo here and this and that, and they're not always able to fully fulfill it. So definitely making sure that the expectations are defined. And then the visibility piece of do you want these brands or these foundations or these individuals, do they align well with SPJ, with your chapter, what you're talking about, the event even? And then that, of course, I mentioned before, that independence concern. And then sometimes I've seen a bit of disagreement where someone, let's say on a chapter board might, say, I think this is a great company, we should get support from them. And then others disagree for a variety of different reasons. So definitely understanding those challenges and being able to talk through them. So in terms of some of the blurred fundraising practices I mentioned already, some of those perceived conflicts that can arise, potential reputational damage, even a lot of the issues is usually taking the short-term funding because you need it for for the upcoming event, but not thinking through how that might look long-term for future fundraising efforts or trying to go after maybe bigger companies, and making sure that, what you're doing in the short term, obviously, bleeds well to help you with in the future fundraising. So sort of that difference between donation versus sponsorship, really understanding what each of those are. Really, a donation is just outright philanthropic support. You always hear those phrases of no goods or services were exchanged, right? Versus a sponsorship is often more of like a business transaction, and it's usually where a nonprofit will look to, or even any kind of project will look to provide something in return. Now, of course, we've had instances where some companies might want to sponsor an event, but they don't want any benefits and they waive them. So technically, that is still an outright donation if they're receiving no benefits in return. So that's kind of where that blurred line often can arise, where we might chase a company for a local event to sponsor. They really don't want any of these benefits. They don't really care about the marketing we might offer. They actually really want to help our mission and what we're doing, and so that's more of a donation. So I kind of, when I think about going after sponsorships, I keep those in my mind of when I'm going after some of these companies or individuals or foundations, what are they hoping? Are they hoping for something in return? Does the recognition really matter to them? Or are they simply trying to support and help us get something going? So again, understanding the nature of what they're trying to do, what are you able to offer? Their intent is key. And then of course the tax treatment obviously for certain chapters matters more. Okay. So for these are some of the more common pieces as you think about what you offer with sponsorships. Usually we make like a prospectus or even a few pages that define sort of what we might offer, maybe levels. It's very common. I'm sure you all have seen those. But we think through, how can we, let's just think of companies in particular, what can we offer from this event? Are we going to be able to place their logo somewhere? Is it going to be online, in print? We're going to have any other type of branding to promote who they are and what they do? Are we going to allow them to say anything, maybe at the event, or just in general? Are they going to be doing like a booth? Mainly what kind of promotion, what kind of advertising of that brand? And I say brand, but I've gotten plenty of sponsors before from even foundations and even individuals. Sometimes you have individuals who might really love what you guys are doing and looking to be a sponsor for an upcoming event or help underwrite maybe event tickets, etc. In terms of donations, this is just quick, again, pretty self-explanatory, but maybe potentially donating to direct scholarships, trainings, maybe supporting student journalism. There might be specific programming, things they can support throughout the year, or even one-offs to support local chapter work. So again, more, as I said, the intent is philanthropy. The intent is to get nothing in return. That's really a donation. I'll skip through a few things, but obviously there is some ethics that, and we always talk about ethics at SPJ, but of course there is some ethics that bleed into when we think about accepting donations, accepting sponsorships, and sometimes you might even think at the chapter level to think through sort of like a gift acceptance policy. It's pretty common, but really what that is it could be a one or two pager that really the organization comes together and thinks through what kind of gifts are we willing to accept, which are we not, and what is the process to review them. So I've had plenty of times before where somebody might make a donation and we simply have a policy and we say, we'd love to take the donation, we'd like to refer it for consideration. And it kind of gives you a little bit of breathing room to say, we really don't want to be seen taking money from that company. It doesn't fit well with who we are and what we represent. And it kind of gives you a nice way or a nicer way to turn around and say, simply this gift is not, we're not able to accept this gift at this time. So that's something that I would definitely push chapters to think about, even if it's like I said, a one or two pager. I have a lot of examples I can always send if anyone's curious. I'll skip through some of these scenarios. These are more some generalized scenarios, but thinking through more appropriate sponsorship and then appropriate donation. Like I said, I'll share this with you. I kind of talked through even scenarios already, but understanding those expectations. Some chapters might want to have like a written agreement when it comes to sponsorships. For donations, sometimes you'll consider like a pledge sheet, even if it's a one pager. It's nothing legal. It's more of just kind of understanding intent of what are they hoping to get or not get. And it helps kind of define that, especially if you have, chapter leadership is changing always. So this is sometimes a great way to sustain that relationship. And I know, Adam, I think you and I have talked about examples before of, where expectations, maybe were formed with one chapter leadership and then that turned over and then everyone kind of did not know what was previously agreed to. And then that didn't help relationships going down the road to try to get sustained sponsorships and support. Some common mistakes. I've sort of talked a little bit about one or two of these already, but being inconsistent with the benefits. I said before, calling everything a sponsorship when really they're donations. Um, and then also not realizing that donations can actually help you support your events. They don't have to always be just the typical sponsorship route. And then also often I see folks making informal promises. A board member maybe helps secure a sponsorship for an event, but have, sort of agreed verbally with maybe that company they might work for or something else to what the benefits will be when really that's not what the chapter can offer. So making sure that everyone who's helping ask for sponsorships is aligned on what can be offered. And then a big mistake is definitely allowing sponsored influence, where you're so eager to get that sponsorship that we're letting some of our sponsors dictate perhaps how an event should go, some of the language behind what should be said. We definitely don't want that. We want to control our events. We want to control our brand. Um, and then, like I said before, documenting expectations. That's always helpful to me to understand, in black and white, what have we promised? What are they looking for? What can we actually deliver? Is there a timeline that they like? Something prioritized? And then thinking long term, because that is probably one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen in a lot of chapters, and it's inherent in the structure. But this kind of stop, start with every event that I've seen, pretty much, many of them. where it's kind of every year a scramble to find sponsors, even though folks have sponsored before, and often not going back to them or often not continuing that relationship with that point of contact. So that's definitely a key one to look at. Maybe I'll skip over this a bit. I've talked to some of these already. Yep, motivations. I mean, this is common. This is probably one of the biggest things when folks talk to me about like how do we get sponsors or what are sponsors really looking for versus donors. You can see here, definitely under donors, they're looking for impact, right? They're being inspired. Maybe they want to help you complete something or fill a gap. But there's definitely more of that philanthropic tinge to it versus sponsors, often will look for brand exposure. Maybe they see a rival company as a sponsor already, and they want to be on the list as well to make sure they're mentioned. Maybe they have some of their staff are actually members of SPJ. They want to be supportive and be seen to support. Um, Sometimes recruitment even depends on the brand, but sometimes they actually want to recruit folks in our industry to come over and help out and be part of their brand. And then often visibility. They have a certain, let's say for companies, CSR budget each year, and maybe journalism is a pillar that they want to look at. And so they want to be seen supporting that in the different communities where they exist. Okay, so I've mentioned a few of these already, but again, understanding what it is to sponsor, let's say a project or an event, standardizing those levels, trying to keep them the same each year as much as we can. And then potentially having written agreements. These don't have to be super formal. Sometimes they're just a one pager, sort of like a pledge agreement, which you can find plenty online. Making sure that at least internally with the chapters that we are aligned with what we're willing to accept. Maybe there's some outright what we are not willing to accept any sponsorships from these two industries. And we're very clear on that. And so we don't even pursue it. And if it does come up, we talk about it. And then how do we recognize? Making sure that we're standardizing that. And again, the big thing is making sure we can do it. I've seen many folks promise way too much. And then when it comes time for the event, they're not able to actually do it. And then they worry about that relationship. And then that sort of leadership approval, who is the ultimate sign off? Is it based on like a committee for an event? Is it a chapter president? Do you want to run that even by national to think about, what any advice or exposure risks we can look at? And then actually looking at the sponsorship packages, again, I'm going to share this so you can look at some of my tips here, but things to avoid. We've talked about some of those pitfalls, really making sure you're clear. Also offering levels that are attainable, but also not undermining what you could get. I see that a lot where we're eager to get sponsorships so much that we price them very low. And we say, you know what, our top sponsor is going to be $500 when you're going after brands who are used to giving, $5,000 for events. Sometimes it even knocks you out of the running right from the start when they get a prospectus for an event and they see some of the levels even too low. They just say, well, that's not something we do. We look at some of these bigger events. So sometimes it's just really knowing your audience, especially depending on your market. Like let's say you're a chapter in the New York area. Again, you're going after brands that are quite large and they do large sponsorships. So often having those levels tiered appropriately to be able to go after some of the bigger brands versus you might be, in the Midwest, in a smaller town, and you might say, you know what, a lot of nonprofits in town go after 2,500 as the lead sponsorship. And that's what we're going to have as our top level. And that makes sense. Okay, some got messed up here, but some other ways to look at it. I know we're doing this a bit with national, looking at other ways and other specific things that folks can support as it relates to, let's say, the convention or just in general. But thinking through what else does your chapter offer? It's not always, just sponsor our event. Sometimes they say, we don't really do event sponsorships. You could say, well, we also have a scholarship program, and we'd like to support, we're going to raise $10,000 to support students, and that's the point of this event. And would you consider making a donation to support the scholarships that we're going to offer? And they might say, yeah, okay, we won't be a sponsor, but we're going to give you outright $5,000 to help with that. And so it's also being creative with who you're going after for donations or sponsorships to make sure, when you're doing an event, it's not all in on just trying to go after sponsors. You can get some brands and some foundations, even individuals, to say, I'll make a donation to support your event, but I'd like to specifically support, through a donation, let's say scholarships. Um, okay. And then looking, I kept mentioning short term versus long term. I always think in the long term, which can be frustrating when we have very short term goals and expectations. But SPJ has been around a long time. And so I think it's important for us to be thinking beyond just, in the near term, next few months, and thinking, how can I help build our capacity, even at the chapter level, to go after potential sponsorships and donations to support our events, to support our special projects. And that's really key. So even when I'm going after, let's say, a sponsor for even the convention coming up, I'm also thinking about, if we can get them in the door, if we can get them active and giving and sponsoring, what else can we do with them? Is there another bucket of funds to go after for a program? Is there a way to make this a multi-year opportunity? Is there a way to move them up, maybe in year two in their support once they see the value of our event? All right. Okay, so I'm going to breeze through some of this. I know there's a few people on the call. If you have any specific questions, I would love them. I went pretty quick. But again, I already touched on a few of these points. I will share this so you have it. These are some just quick tips. So I say fundraising audit, that doesn't have to be super formal. It can simply be, in a meeting, thinking about, okay, how have we approached sponsorships and donations and partnerships in the past 2 or 3 years? What are some of those maybe holes that we see? Do we have a process in place for how we accept donations or sponsorships? Do we have some continuity in our past sponsorship proposals or prospectuses? And then standardizing as much as you can. So again, every time leadership might change, but trying to say, can we hold true to, let's say, our core sponsorship levels, our benefits that we offer? Can we keep some consistency so we also don't, confuse some of the prospects we're going after? Because I see that a lot, is you have all kinds of different materials going to the same people for sponsorships or donations, and oftentimes those potential funders just get overwhelmed and they just can't even deal with it. So again, some of that comes with, some better additional training. I think there are a lot of chapters that do this really well. So maybe even learning from others. And I'm curious for folks on the call if you have any specific examples. Um, and then also, just keeping it, we want to keep our credibility strong. And that's one reason, I agree to have these chats with Adam and everyone, is that I want to make sure that all of us, the chapters, national, we're all going after support to support the work that we're doing. And we want to make sure that there's a level of building trust across the board. We're reaching out to brands, foundations, individuals, and we're showing them the strength of our chapters, we're showing them the strength of our regions, we're showing them the strength of even national, and how that can all work together and how they can be part of that puzzle. And that comes with consistency, building that trust, staying true to the mission, being independent, all right, and also looking down the road. Okay. All right. So I went extremely fast as I planned to do. I don't know if there's I think, Laura, I think you're on the call. I saw Jerry. I don't know if you have any specific comments, if you have any thoughts from your own experience. Jennifer, I see you there too. Adam.
I'm just lurking.
It's
I don't
quiet.
have any comments.
You're just lurking, you said? Anybody else? I put them to sleep. Quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any
Oh,
specific questions, but it was just trying to learn, so I think it went well.
okay, great. I think Adam said he had to run too. So, all right. Well, Jerry, you have any questions? If not, again, we don't have to take the whole hour. Just wanted to get this out there, and I'll share the deck, and of course, I'll make sure if anyone has further questions or you want to meet up separately, I'm happy to. Nope, Jerry, I think I'm mute.
I assumed that one of the ethical concerns would be not to accept any tax dollars. Is that a pretty universal concept from
Is what?
donors?
Sorry, you said tax dollars? What'd you
Yeah,
say?
from donors. If you like a public university
Uh,
um, or an agency that's doing some marketing, I just we're supposed to be holding those people at bay, and
yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I've heard most from some chapters is that concern. Like I've had a journalist or two comment on how they're covering, let's say, a public university or even a private company too, and saying like, I'm reporting on them. Now, if I get a $25,000 donation or sponsorship for our event, how does that look? So I definitely think that that's something I would assume. I would say a chapter should have like a standard of this is how we treat that. Are there certain folks we need to stay away from as we try to go after sponsorships? And also, how do we review that, even on a case by case basis? And again, I think politely either decline or my preference is to try to head that off before you ask, right? Because the worst thing you to do is, a chapter member has gone out and asked for funding. They said yes, and then all of a sudden you have to tell them no when they're like, "Well, you asked me for support." So I think you all coming together and saying like, "What entities do we just simply? This is why we hesitate to reach out to these groups, at least to start, and maybe at all." I think it's better to head it off versus actually, because sometimes we're all excited, and I've seen chapters just go out to anyone and everybody. And then they come back and then they feel very dismayed and it's like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore because I tried to help and apparently, it didn't work. But when really it just didn't fit with what you're trying to do and it maybe crossed the line in certain areas. So, yeah. All right, Jerry, thank you. All right. Well, any other quick questions? I know Adam had to step away. Laura, thank you for being on. Jerry, like I said, I'll share this out and hope some folks find some help in it and always happy to have other side conversations with people with any of their thoughts or concerns or ideas. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you all have a great night.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
I add up to Lucas.
Yep.
Every month it's going to be different, or is it the same thing every month?
No, it's going to be different. So I got to look at next month, but I'm going to try to send out some of the invites a little earlier. But I have you on the list now, Jerry, so you'll get an email and you'll see I'm going to put the topic so you'll know about it. It's every third Tuesday of the month. So it'll be a different topic next month. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Could you add me to the email list as well? Because I actually got forwarded this invitation.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll add you, Laura.
Okay, that'd be great.
Uh,
Thank you.
Let me actually real quick while I have you guys on anyways, let me just put the link in the chat. This way we make sure it happens.
Will it be the same Zoom link every month?
No, you don't have to fill it out every month. So I'm gonna basically once you've signed up on this link, Laura, I don't know if you see in the chat.
Yes.
If you don't mind just filling in your info there, and then I have that list, and I'm going to make sure to push a note to y'all probably about 2 weeks prior, and then a little reminder the day before, the day of. Yeah. Okay.